All right, everybody, welcome back to the Relentless Potential Podcast. It's been a few weeks. I hope they've been good. And today, I want to talk about what I said I was going to talk about last time, and that's reshaping for better sense of progress, reshaping some of our expectations and understandings around progress. Now, this may be a little bit of a quicker one, so it'll just make it easier for you to learn and incorporate. Yeah, my name is Andrew Schubauer. I'm the coach and owner, founder of Mountain Wisdom LLC. I'm a self-efficacy coach, neuro-linguistic programming coach, emotional intelligence coach, and my goal with this podcast and everything I do is to help you discover your potential, move your life forward, and do it in a way that doesn't create burnout, but creates sustainable, long-term growth with joy, fun, and fulfillment. All right, let's get into it today. So, reshaping. I want to be clear right up front. Reshaping is not denying. In fact, to reshape, one of the most important things we have to do is acknowledge what's happening. We need to acknowledge our current reality and our current truths. Because otherwise, what are we reshaping? If we understand our obstacles, we're better able to understand what we need to overcome them. You don't need the same skill set to, if the challenge is swim across a fast river, as you do if you're biking downhill, right? If you're mountain biking or if you're whitewater rafting, they're very different skills. Even though they're still outdoors, even though they're still high intensity, right? For those same reasons, that's why we want to look at and be really honest about what our obstacles are. So make sure that you're not ignoring while you're reshaping. Because what you're really reshaping, you're reshaping your mind, but again, with the right tools. The wrong tools, we know it doesn't work well, right? Let's look at, if you know tools or screwdrivers, Phillips head, flathead. The one that looks like this, or the one that's just flat. You have the wrong one, doesn't work so well. Sometimes they make screws that have both, and in that case, you have more tools, right? The problem is more adaptable, and that actually does happen in life sometimes. Sometimes problems, or most of the time, problems have multiple solutions, and how something needs to be reshaped may vary. In fact, that's the other aspect that I do want to talk about today, and that's that we are always changing. Each one of us is unique. So the combination of events and situations and thought patterns and environments that create our barriers require us to create a unique tool or multiple tools to overcome. When we're reshaping, we need to know what we're reshaping from. We need to create the right tool for it, and that's going to be unique to you. So everything that I talk about in this podcast, I need you to think about and process on your own to develop the tools that you need and decide what, from what I say, speaks to you as truth and what may simply be speaking to somebody else. But back to reshaping. Once you know what the challenge is, a lot of reshaping is language, reframing, revisualization. And again, there's a lot of ways to communicate. So when I say language, think in terms of like general communication. Some people survive off GIFs and memes. Other people like written word. Other people, like some people like text versus a phone call. Some people learn differently. And this is a big aspect because what we're actually doing when we're communicating with ourselves and reshaping is we need to speak in our own language. And yes, this could be the love language, right? What you need to hear, the way you need to hear it, but more in terms of when you're trying to reshape. If you're a visual person, then you're going to want to visualize what does it look like? What do you see as a potential problem? If you're more of a hands-on person, what do you feel? How does that feel? How does that experience show up in a physical state for you when you say those words? Or do you see words or do you hear things? What does that sound like when you say something, when you say something that isn't working for you, an unaffirming statement? How does that sound and what would sound better? Those are some of the things we have to think about when we're looking at reshaping. For example, I was just with a client the other day and we did a lot of reshaping. The other, so without giving away too many details, because I take my client privacy very, very seriously, we were recognizing language patterns and what was naturally coming up because unfortunately this person had a number of challenging experiences like a lot of us. So our preset so we started to get preset or reinforced towards a protective mindset. And what we reshaped in that experience is actually was a truth that came about that he's not actually protecting. What he's actually doing is inhibiting, right? Because when we overprotect, that's exactly what we do. And what we often need to reshape is those automatic negative thoughts. Um, Daniel Amen calls them ants, automatic negative thoughts, right? But we need to identify them, find out if they're true, find out if they're false, and then reshape them and reshape what our language is. But we can't do that again without the introspection to pay attention. Um, so one way to move forward is to reshape our thoughts, find those barriers and reshape. But that's not the only aspect of it, right? Reshaping to overcome barriers, mental hurdles, fantastic. Accepting reality, also fantastic. Because one aspect of reality that we touched on last time in the previous episode was how it's important to fuel and look at ourselves in a holistic environment, what actually fuels our progress. And that leads me into our expectations. A lot of times when we struggle to continue to move forward with joy and fulfillment, it's because of neglect. We think we're making progress, and we may be making progress, but we're actually, without words and simply through lack of diversity, we limit our progress. Like I talked about in the last episode, if we're not eating, how far can we push? If we're not fueling properly, how far can we push? The reason we do that is false expectations, false understandings. We expect, a lot of us, we tend to have a belief that we need total focus all the time, total obsession over one thing, right? And a lot of people will speak to that. I'm sure if you really want great things, you need to be obsessive, right? And I know what they mean. And what they mean is you need to be incredibly passionate, like more passionate than the average person. because the more passion you have, that's going to be your fuel that's going to drive you to go further. That's one fuel source, right? However, with that comes stress. That mindset comes stress. You can feel it. Like, I need to push harder. I need to find more passion. I need to be more driven than everyone else if I'm going to succeed where everyone else fails. Now, on the other side, you'll hear other people talk about, like gentleman Cal Newport, he has a book called Slow Productivity. Looks at it differently. It's about consistency. It's about steady progress. And that's honestly more in my vein is the steady progress. I don't care how fast you go as long as you're doing it in a sustainable way. I kind of fall in the middle of that. If you There are times to push hard, there are times to take things slow, and it depends on the situation. But the reason it takes time to do things fast, some things need to go fast, some things need to go slow, are timelines and immediate effort. As an outdoors person, there's times where I need to push a lot harder for a short period of time or a lot harder on an incline that may only get me a half a mile and I'm dying. And I'm pushing harder, but I'm going slower, but I'm pushing harder. I'm using more energy per step, right? And sometimes that's necessary to maintain my timeline that I have. And other times I get over it and then I'm going downhill or there's a gentle grade and I'm able to just cruise. Right? Effort and mileage don't necessarily equal out. But what matters, especially on the uphill, there's a thing called a rescue step for search and rescue. Um, and for hiking, it's a way you place your feet to recover while you're going uphill. And as your muscles burn out, they burn through all their immediate energy. I won't get into the whole energy cycle, don't worry. Um, but they need to take a rest step. That rest step actually enables them to go farther. If they didn't take that rest step and they kept trying to push, they'd burn their body out. They'd never make it to the top. And that's where that balance comes in. So a lot of times people will get in their head that that rest step is not making progress. But without that rest step, what they're not thinking about is the fact that they won't get to their destination otherwise. They'll never make it. Similarly, what if you're pushing and pushing and pushing so hard you never look around? You get to a goal, you hit a moment, right? Even if that goal is something that's becomes self-sustainable, you can either do that goal, reach it, be totally burnt out, and yay, now it's self-sustaining. Great, it's easier. But you look back and you're like, I have done literally nothing else with my life. And some people, okay, you're fine with that. Other people, not so much. Right? And there is a beauty in cutting out things for greater focus. But here's the thing. None of those people who did anything that lasted more than a couple days did only one thing. Or even a whole day did only one thing. Because biologically we can't do that. Right? We can maintain focus, but we need to do other things. Our life is complex. And if you really want to keep moving forward and not feel burnout and not feel like you don't ever want to do something again, you're like, I never want to push this hard again. That is a sign, right? There's a reason that that feeling comes up. It's because you pushed in a way that denied you pleasure in the experience and fulfillment in the experience. And because your body knows that that is not sustainable. Right? I'm going to flip this back to hiking again because I know a lot about it. So backpacking, long distance backpackers will tell you you can't eat enough because you can't pack enough. In order to maintain healthy body weight long term, if someone were to go continuously, they'd actually need to slow down. They need to burn fewer calories per day, but then they never had to stop. And if they do that, what they actually do is put less strain on their body. What that means is their body's able to move farther, longer, right? It doesn't break down. They're not going to have the same injuries. They're not going to develop the same, they're less likely to develop the same kind of body pains and arthritis and damage that happens in extreme athletes. Now, obviously, athletes are to be admired for the amount of effort they put in, but not everybody wants that. And if you're okay with short-term, arguably somewhat short-term goals, especially in the athletic world, unfortunately, without um with accepting that it's going to have to stop because it's literally just not a sustainable process, then great. Even David Goggins, who you may or may not have heard of, I started following him when I decided to start running ultras. It only lasted a year. I found out I don't love ultras, right? Um, so I could do it. I wanted to know if I could, but then I was like, I don't enjoy this, so it's not worth it for long term for my life. But I started listening to him, and I read one book and then I read another book. And what was interesting is seeing his mindset change. When he was younger, he thought push, push, push. But as he gets older, recovery is more and more important. But he still has a lot of issues. Now, did he do amazing things? Yes. Is he still an incredibly tough human being? Yes. And that's what he wants, and that's his goal. The vast majority of us, though, we don't want that. Right? We want to be able to move with less stress. We want to look back and enjoy more parts of our lives. And what's required in doing that is going to vary. So that means we need to manage our expectations. We need to acknowledge more as progress rather than just the one thing that we're focusing on, like the goal. Right? So the harder we want to work, the better we need to eat. So stopping to eat, slowing down and sleeping more, spending time with family, and doing it in a way that's supportive. Now, ironically, my partner's uh, parent, just the other day, I was talking to them about an idea because it's something I had to reframe for myself. Um, is rather than look at days off, I look at them, I've started to reframe them as days of opportunity. And my partner's mother was concerned. She was like, well, aren't you ever going to take days off? Is that healthy? But here's the thing. If I'm taking the right opportunities, it is. Because if I'm taking the opportunity to recover where I need to, if I'm taking the opportunity to eat better during that time frame, if I'm giving myself space to think rather than just trying to push, 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 yes, it is. If that opportunity presents itself in terms of family time, then yes, it is healthy, right? But all of those things, and this is what I really want to shape when we're talking about reshaping expectations, I want you to consider that when you're reshaping, you're actually becoming more inclusive because you are a complex human being. And the more aspects of yourself you can support while pursuing any given goal, the better the outcome, right? The healthier you are at the other side of your journey, the healthier you probably were during the whole process, right? You're going to be less likely to be as burned out. Now, again, fatigue, effort, that happens, but that's different, right? That's different than burnout. And that's what we really want to avoid on relentless potential, right? We want to be able to keep going, keep going, keep going. The way we do that is by supporting our life holistically and recognizing that when our body says we need something, it's probably not lying. Now, if our body says it wants something, we should also listen, but sometimes, admittedly, that can be counterproductive, right? Just because there's conflicting, because often we want more than one thing. But I'm going to save that for another episode. But either way, to get back on focus, to get back on task, that um, when when we look at growth, we have to look at everything that goes into it. And we have to reshape our belief that only when we're doing something directly related to the goal we're trying to accomplish, that's the only thing that actually equals progress. Because it's not. Downtime can create some of the best ideas you'll ever have on how to accomplish your goal. Slowing down, creating space, some of the best opportunities for new insight. Getting on the phone call, getting on a phone with a friend, talking with somebody, having a conversation, what's going on with your life can create new ideas and give you a better direction to get to where you're going even quicker without even intentionally talking about it or making that the topic of discussion. If you're fueling your body well, again, you can think better. You have the energy for optimism because optimism does actually require more fuel. If you're low energy, what is your body doing? It's trying to come up with as many reasons to slow down as possible, which is not a bad thing. It's probably a good thing to listen to. Either change your fuel or um, maybe you just need to listen to it and say, what do I need? But you need to recognize that none of that is a lack of progress. It's what creates that sustainable progress. It's what allows you to be relentless. It's what allows you to pursue when other people burn out. All right. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you want to know more, or you want more about me, or you want to be coached by me, find me at www.mountainwisdomllc.com or on Instagram at my name, Andrew Schubauer. And I hope to hear from you. Please leave comments if you think they're going to be helpful or they're going to be constructive, because my perspective, I try to stay as open as possible, but your perspective is valuable too. So please feel free to contribute. Thank you.